So what an intriguing day one for the final shape we've had. And before everyone on YouTube grouchily corrects me, is grouchily a word? I don't really know. It probably summarizes how I'm feeling pretty well. But yes, unfortunately, the final shape launch has been very rough in terms of day one. Loads of error codes. And of course, all of that following server queues, which were pretty extended for a lot of players. A lot of players had to spend between 2 and 4 or 5 or maybe even more hours than that to actually get in. But beyond that, server stability problems have continued to plague the game. And yes, we do indeed tend to see server instability, sign-in issues, error codes and all of that stuff at an expansion launch, but unfortunately for the final shape, which just happens to be a very important one, in terms of the day one experience, the game has been nearly unplayable. I mean, it's pretty close to that, so I've been there with you guys, man. It's been a pretty rough one. In terms of what Bungie have said about this, the last thing they said at the time of making this video is that we're continuing to investigate the root cause of issues resulting in a high volume of error codes, including Current, Cabbage, and Weasel, and they are providing updates on this about every 2 hours. But even more unfortunate, really, is that the error codes and the being kicked to orbit, kicked back to the start screen, have actually resulted in a lot of players struggling to watch cutscenes, missing out on bits of cinematic content and story content. It's also created bugs where players aren't able to pick up the prismatic subclass and a whole host of other issues. So in terms of other updates Bungie have given, they've said players who receive an error code during the cutscenes after the transmigration mission can return to the Pale Heart via the landing zone, which is on the far left of the map off screen, to continue their campaign progress. So if you've encountered that, it may be a useful tip for when you get into the game again. But they've also said in terms of prismatic acquisition issues, players who completed the transmigration mission but did not unlock prismatic will need to replay the mission solo to acquire the new subclass. And so not only are players actually missing out on story content and cinematics, but that disruption's actually spreading into progression components of the final shape, where players are missing out on rewards and even the prismatic subclass unlock, which is requiring them to go back through the same mission without a fire team, which of course is the last thing we need after sitting in a server queue for hours and constantly being kicked. But another update from Bungie here, and they say when launching into the first campaign mission, players will see the normal difficulty permanently displayed above the launch button, but this can be disregarded as mission difficulty selection will occur only after the mission has been launched. This was actually confusing our fire team quite a lot because we couldn't change the difficulty level. As far as I know though, if you've started out on Legendary, unless at some point you set it back to normal, even if it says it's on normal, it should continue to be on Legendary, which yeah, is also pretty confusing. So it's been a really disruptive day one experience, and it's actually, I feel like, a pretty significant shame because in terms of the story components that I have seen, I've actually nearly finished the campaign, but we're struggling to just get into that last mission and we're starting to get really tired. But in terms of the narrative so far, the cinematic content, actually, the quality bar seems to be pretty high. And I also think the gameplay components for the campaign itself have been pretty good as well. Prismatic's been fun, there's been some engaging mechanics in some of the content, which on the most part have been sort of out of the scope of what we would normally see as part of a campaign. So it definitely is frustrating because the content so far actually seems to be pretty good. And I totally agree with those players who are highly frustrated and can't understand why launches seem to have so many of these issues, but also with the importance of this expansion in terms of ending the Destiny Light and Darkness saga. Not only have delays and error codes been sort of frustrating and a bit annoying, they've actually been more disruptive than what we've seen with previous releases, in terms of it being a distraction from the content itself. So then that's a shame because it will sort of mar the day one experience for a lot of players. And the game post actually rounded up a bunch of responses from folks in the community as well, stating that player excitement was quickly overshadowed by widespread server issues that plagued launch. And they say one of the most discussed threads in the Destiny the Game subreddit emphasized the impact of these server errors on the storytelling experience, that's what we've been speaking about, and how for a lot of players this is one of the biggest narrative moments in Destiny history, and most people are error coding out of every other cutscene. And another user had said, I'm wondering why the pacing felt so weird until I realized that I'd missed 2 entire cutscenes and had to look them up. Plus Solder Greppo, a well-known Destiny streamer, had also said I was very hyped for Final Shape, especially after Into the Light being really good, but so far this is pretty sad, with servers being completely dead 3 days away from a day one raid. And of course, a lot of players don't necessarily even engage with a raid, so while there are some folks who are frustrated that this is affecting their progress leading up to that raid at the end of the week. There are also loads of players who see the campaign and this story as kind of the most important part of Final Shape. So it's definitely been a frustrating one, guys. I'm not posting this video purely to complain. I wanted to give you a couple of the updates from Bungie and kind of gauge how you guys are feeling about the Final Shape. Also, feel free to let us know any positives that you have about the experience so far down below. Because like I said, I actually think the offering in terms of the new content, prismatic, some of the loot we've picked up as well, some of the weapons are absolutely wild. Even the episode weapons that you can get on the season pass, we've got new archetypes. There are a bunch of exotic quests coming up later on after the campaign. And so far it also feels like the destination really has been built for the campaign experience, much more so than perhaps other destinations are, with this being sort of a linear space. It's definitely a very questified destination, so there's loads of stuff that Final Shape looks like it's doing pretty well, outside of the major distraction with server issues today. So either way, those are Bungie's updates. Let us know your experiences down below. I hope this quick update has been useful in some respect, and hopefully tomorrow will be a smoother day and Bungie will be able to iron out some of the issues and we can kind of get into it, albeit a few hours later than intended. So give us your thoughts, guys. Otherwise, I appreciate you tuning in. I'll still be keeping you posted on the Final Shape. I'm still extremely excited to get into more of the content once things do sort of calm down a little bit. Otherwise though, if you're not having a super fun time in the game, don't forget there is nothing wrong with taking a bit of chill time and coming back tomorrow to a hopefully better situation. For now though, guys, I appreciate you watching and I will catch you all very soon.